The Shiva House by Max Weil has a minyan in the morning at 8 o'clock, and they barely scraping through. So if it's convenient for anyone, at 8 o'clock at 6 Magnus. In this week's parsha, the Torah mentions as a lav Lashon Hara. And Lashon Hara is a very prevalent lav. The Gemara says, Rubam begezel. Most people find it hard to find all kosher money. Kosher money is not easily in circulation. Umyuton bi'aroyos. A minority of people are trapped in arroyos in sexual problems. V'kulam bi'avak lashon hara. But everyone is covered by the dust of lashon hara. So the Rishonim discuss it and define it. There are things that are called lashon hara, and there are things that are avak lashon hara. They're not lashon hara, but they're the dust of lashon hara. And the Torah treats it very harshly because the adjoining pasuk is "Lakelev tashlichun also." And so the Gemara says if someone that engages in lashon hara on a regular basis, so then he's worthy "Lakelev tashlichun also" to be thrown to the dogs. In other words, he loses his humanity. Now, lashon hara is a lav she'ein bo maaseh. There's no malchus for it. And the person that speaks lashon hara didn't do anything. He just said things. But yet the Gemara says that it's equivalent to murder. And many times we see that it is. The Gemara says there are many victims. The one who says it, the one who it is said about, and society are all victimized by lashon hara. Now, in our time, that sounds anachronistic at best, because lashon hara is an industry. We call it the media, whatever we call it, but that's their business. And since we have the noble concept of freedom of speech, so freedom of speech allows anybody to say anything at any time. In the United States, where it's part of the Bill of Rights, so Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes famously in 1896 tried to limit freedom of speech. So he said the famous example that you're not allowed to shout fire in a crowded theater when there is no fire. But it's very hard to characterize that, to define it, to say what it is. And so it's very interesting that only in the last 130 years, a Shulchan Aruch was written about lashon hara. It's the famous sefer of the Chafetz Chaim. He called it Chafetz Chaim, based on the pasuk Miyoish Chafetz Chaim, Oiv Yomin L'Ros Tov, Netzor Lishon Chomerah, V'Sfasecha Medaber Mirma. And he published the sefer anonymously. But after, I would say after a decade and a half, it became known that he was the author of that sefer of the Chafetz Chaim. He has a story that he's told about himself, is that when he was still anonymous, so he was riding in a wagon with someone, And that person said, well, I got this new sefer, the Chafetz Chaim, and what a wonderful sefer. And it's unique. There never has been one like this. So he said the author of that sefer must be a great Talmid Chacham. It must be a great genius to be able to create it. But the Chafetz Chaim said, Lav Davka. You don't have to be such a great genius, So the man was very angry at him. And he said, how can you say that? And the Chafetz Chaim persisted. He said, it's a good sefer, but... So the man was so angry that he struck the Chafetz Chaim. Because he said, you're Mavaza Talmid Chacham. And in Lithuania, anyone that was Mavaza Talmid Chacham, someone else had the right to hit him. And in fact, it was one of the weapons of the Rabbonim in Lita, was that they could give somebody a frosk. I don't know whether we should reinstitute that or not. I don't know whether it would fly in our times, but that was it. So the Chafetz Chaim said, I learned a lesson from there, that you cannot even say Lashon Hara on yourself. And he characterized Lashon Hara categorically, what could be said, what can't be said, when it can be said, under what circumstances. So, and then he said, what's avak Lashon Hara? Okay, there's Lashon Hara. If someone says, Yankel is a Ganiv, that's Lashon Hara, even though Yankel may be a Ganiv. If he's not a Ganiv, it's a liar. That's not Lashon Hara. But what's Avak Lashon Hara? So Avak Lashon Hara is in the instances when speaking about others is permitted. For instance, I want to go into business with Yankel. And I don't know anything about it. And he had former experiences with people in business and monetary matters. So I asked the person that was his partner before, what about Yankel? And he said, Yankel's a Ganiv. So that's not Lashon Hara. That's because we have another law in the Torah that you're not allowed to put a stumbling block before a blind man, right? Lifnei Iver. So if he lets me become a partner with a Ganiv, and he knows he's a Ganiv, he's over on that. So he's allowed to say Yankel is a Ganiv. But he's not allowed to tell him the story. That's already Avak Lashon Hara. So even when Lashon Hara is permissible, there's the dust of Lashon Hara that gathers, that appears all over the place. And that's what Chazal meant, that it's kulam be'avak Lashon Hara, because we always find ourselves in circumstances where we have to ask about people. Shidduchim, for instance. I mean, to me, that's the most widespread area today. Someone called me up and he asked me about this and this boy, etc. And then he wanted to know about the boy's health. And then he wanted to know about the parents' health. And then he wanted to know about the grandparents' health. So I told him, the great-grandfather passed away. And he was shocked. So that also is, all of this is included in Avak Lashon Hara. Because is that really germane to the issue? Does it really make a difference? So that's why the Gemara says, and the Mishnah says, Gamliel said, Kol yomai gudalti bein hachachomim v'lo matzosi laguf tov mishusiko. I was raised amongst great wise men, and I learned the lesson that silence is, we have a phrase in English, silence is golden. The Gemara says that dibur b'sela, if you say something is great, it's worth a sela, like a pound or a $10 bill, but shtika betray. But if you're quiet, it's worth 2 slaying. And all of that was because we were trying to avoid the problem of avak lashon hara. And I mentioned to you, just as an aside, I will tell you a story about it, about slapping people. When Rav Kook was the Rav in Boysk, which was a small town in the border of Belarus and Lithuania today. He was a young rabbi. He was a Rav when he was 21 or 22. And one of the Rosh Yeshiva Volozhin came to daven. Happened to be passing through town, so he came to shul to daven. And in shul, there was a 14, 15-year-old kid that was very mischievous and wild. And he went over to this Rosh Yeshiva, and he said to him, don't stand along Shemon Esrei because we have to leave early. And he's going to wait for you, and it's a tircha for us, so don't stand along Shemon Esrei. Rav Kook heard that, so he went over and he slapped him. Well, if you got slapped by the Rav, he didn't think he had much of a future in that town. And then it was a time that a lot of teenagers immigrated to America on their own. And he came to New York, and he became a very successful businessman. He made a lot of money. He was very well known in the community. I don't want to say his name. In 1923, there was a delegation of Rabbonim that went to New York to raise money for the Vada yeshivas to try and rebuild the yeshivas after the First World War. So it was the Kovner Rav, Avram Duber Cohen Shapiro, and Ramesh Mordechai Epstein from Chevroner Yeshiva here, and Rav Kook. So Harry Fischel made for them a reception in the Waldorf Astoria. And he invited all the Gevir, not our Waldorf, but in the Waldorf. Ours is Cain Waldorf. Avak Waldorf. So, big reception, all the Gvirim came, everybody came with envelopes and gave checks and everything. A man walks over to Rav Kook and he says, Rebbe, do you remember me? Kook said, I don't know. Tell me who you are. He said, 30 years ago you slapped me in shul. Rav Kook turned white. He said, Rebbe, you slapped me, I left, I went to America, I become a millionaire, here's the other cheek, hit me again. So that's the way this brought, really it's one of the true stories regarding it. So, but we should all be careful of avak lashon hara. Chananya ben Akash Yomer, Ratzah HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'zakos Yisrael, v'ficha chir b'lehem Torah mitzvot shenemar, Adonai chatzei siman tzidko yachim kol yachim.